A very warm welcome to all our viewers. Today's Education on Air features a very passionate individual who had the opportunity to sell his beloved practice in 2009 in order to concentrate full time on his passion for helping veterinary practices achieve excellence as businesses. He graduated from the University of Sydney with first class honors and has held workshops across Australia, Europe, the USA, and South Africa for smaller organizations as well as his Turbocharge Your Practice workshops, where he coaches veterinary professionals. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Diederik Gelderman. Dr. Gelderman, it is great to have you with us on this EMD Education on Air. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you will be speaking about today?
Hi, well, thank you very much for having me. And thank you for such a generous introduction. The topic today is how to do 12 hours of work in 4. And one of the biggest challenges I see in veterinary practices all over the world is time management and time effectiveness and time efficiency. And that's why I've chosen this topic.
That's great, Dr. Gelderman. Maybe you could begin and enlighten our viewers with your knowledge.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, let's get started. For anybody, I'm going to go through this material very quickly as we only have a limited period of time. And I have a comprehensive set of notes that is 15 or 16 pages, which I'm only too happy to mail to anybody that wants them. All you need to do is email me on the address that's on the screen now, and I'm happy to send them off to you. Now, so you're in the right place today if you've ever run out of time to do the things that you want to do and have to do. If you ever have had constant interruptions during your day, making your day inefficient. If you've ever had challenges in prioritizing your day or find yourself procrastinating on projects and unable to complete, stuff in inverted commas. And if in general you find your work-life balance is out of whack, out of kilter. Or if you have people on your team who have or who face similar challenges. So it's a little bit like this slide here, or I could have possibly put in a guinea pig or a mouse or a rat, running on a treadmill or in a wheel, and that's what a lot of us feel like. Now, some extra thoughts that I'd like to share are that 63% of veterinarians that are surveyed say that they don't have the time in their day that they need to do all the various bits and pieces that they need to do. They want to also be able to spend their time doing things that they want to do and the things that they're passionate about, rather than just having to do the things that they have to do. And if they only get to do what they have to do and not what they want to do, then their work-life balance really is out of whack. Now, what we're going to share today are simple practical strategies and techniques that you can fit into your everyday life. And why is this important? And it is super important. It's a little bit like going on a diet. I mean, so many of us have been on diets, and they're fad diets and yo-yo diets, and we launch or lurch from one diet to another. Now, time management is exactly the same. A diet will work if it is a change of lifestyle or if it can fit into your lifestyle. And time management is the same. If we have to dramatically change the way we do things, then time management is simply not going to work. So it has to be something that is practical and simple and fits into our day-to-day work life and private life. So, as I said, it needs to be a lifestyle change, not a quick fix. The important thing to understand is that we all have the same amount of time, and yet there are certain high achievers that really can get through a lot more than us normal folk seem to be able to. How do they in fact manage that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So at the end of this session, I'd like to think that you have become or will become, with a little bit of practice, a time management maven. So we are all time poor and we are all suffering information overload. And I have slides of women up here because typically the women are under more time pressure than the men, and the men just don't understand this. because the men aren't running the household, looking after the kids and holding down a job as well. Typically, the women do that. So even though it affects, both sexes, I see this as much more of a problem in the ladies than in the men. Or let me put it this way, the ladies seem to understand it more and want to do more about it than the men do. We're all juggling life, and by juggling our time, we are juggling our life. As I said, we all have the same amount of time, and yet certain people like Richard Branson and some of the icons that we all know manage to get through a lot more work than we do. Now, there's a whole heap of studies being done, and if you know what a Fortune 500 company is, and the Fortune 500 companies are the big 500 companies on the planet, the studies have shown that the managers of these companies, the CEOs that get paid, millions of dollars a year, only spend 27 minutes a day running a Fortune 500 company. And how come they can do it in 27 minutes a day? It's purely and simply because they are so effective and efficient during those 27 minutes that they manage to get so much more done than us ordinary folks. So if they only need 27 minutes to run a Fortune 500 company, think of how long you need to run your veterinary practice. And probably it's going to be 27 minutes as well, but something to look forward to. So we can use time effectively or ineffectively. Typically, most of it don't do it very well. It's our biggest challenge, it's our biggest headache, and it's also our biggest opportunity. Lack of time stops most of us doing what we love doing because we can only do what we have to do. What we're going to talk about today is a lot of than people during the when the kings and queens were around and the knights are running around with their swords and all those sorts of things from the the 12 and the 1300s. So from as early as then, time management has been getting worse. And during the Industrial Revolution, we were supposed to have all these time-saving tools. Sorry, didn't work. Actually making the situation worse. As I said, now we have the least amount of time that we've ever had. And the situation is getting worse, and unfortunately chocolate doesn't help, even though many of us would like to think that it does. Now there's a plethora of resource material, books, trainings, etc., CDs, DVDs by the hundreds available. And the problem is that most people will attend courses, read books, buy DVDs, and they never watch them. They don't implement any of the strategies. So if you come along today and simply watch and listen and say, hey, that was good, that was interesting, that was fantastic, or that was brilliant even, and then go home and don't change anything and then don't do anything, I'm sorry, you will in effect have wasted your time. So let me implore you to actually make a plan to implement the things that we talk about today. Because if you don't, you're just going to have wasted an hour or so of your time, with respect, and I think that's purposeless. And as I said, the strategies that we share are not going to be hard. They're going to be very easy, and they will fit in with your day-to-day work life. It just involves a little bit of lateral thinking. Okay, the strategies are easy and simple and straightforward. They're nothing onerous. Now, the reason I have that slide here is that is, a sea of faces, if you like, or a sea of eyeballs, if you like. Don't be like one of those people in that sea. Stand alone and make changes. Today, we're going to talk about four areas, or four simple areas in this webinar today. We're going to talk about energy in its four forms. We're going to talk about prioritizing and your ability to prioritize. We're going to talk about your energy quadrant, and right at the end, I'm going to give you some action steps to implement. And that's going to make it easy for you to get an outcome. 4 is the key today. 4 things. So first of all, energy. It's the fuel in your tank. It's the capacity to do work. It's like the atom in the nuclear power reactor, if you like. And there's 4 forms of energy: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Let's first of all talk about physical. And there's a number of components to physical energy: fitness, nutrition, sleep, and then this thing called the X factor, which we'll get to in a minute. And if I asked you, which one of those was more important, was it fitness, was it nutrition, was it sleep, or was it the X factor? Well, most of you might say, some of you might say fitness, some of you might say nutrition, some of you might say sleep, and some of you may know about this X factor, which we'll talk about in a little while, and may suggest that. And I'm going to say to you, if there is one thing you should never cheat yourself on, it is sleep. You can afford to be less fit, you can afford to eat less well, you can afford to use less of the X factor, but you can't afford to go with lack of sleep. Studies show that someone that's been awake for 24 hours is equivalent in intelligence to someone that's stoned. Someone that's been not sleeping and working for 36 hours is equivalent to someone that is drunk and has 0.07 percent alcohol in their bloodstream, or more than 0.07. Now, yet many of us will come to work with poor sleep. Now, would you let someone that's stoned or someone that's drunk come into your workplace? No. But yes, there are doctors that will go on 36-hour shifts. There are veterinarians that do exactly the same. Doesn't make sense to me. 97.5% of the population need between 7 and 8 hours of sleep per night. Yes, you can skimp and miss some sleep, 1 or 2 or 3 nights a week and make up for it on the weekend, or make it up for it with extra sleep, a few extra nights of the week. But you can't do this consistently. It doesn't work. It'll turn around and haunt you. Most of the major accidents in the last 5 or 10 years, things like the Exxon Valdez and things like that, have all been attributed to poor sleep. In human hospitals, the incidence of mismedication, the incidence of misdiagnosis, etc., are highest in doctors, or caused by doctors and nurses that have been doing 2 or more shifts sequentially. So, if you're going to go to an after hours or an emergency, situation, if you've got to go to a hospital yourself and that doctor appears to have been on shift for more than 24 hours or 20 hours or 18 hours or something like that, may I suggest that you actually get out of there and go to another hospital or ask for another doctor, because the chance of a misdiagnosis has gone up astronomically, and as has the chance of mismedication. So just on sleep, I have a webinar that I do that's just on sleep itself. So I'm really short-circuiting and curtailing what I'd like to spend an hour going over, but I've just given you some thoughts on this. Now, let's move on a little bit, and I'm going now to talk about this X factor, or dynamic rest and renewal. So we have two rhythms which I know that you know of or know about, and one is the circadian rhythm, the rhythm of night and day, and that's a 12-hour cycle more or less. And there's a new rhythm that was discovered in the last 5 to 7 years, and it's called the ultradian rhythm. It's one that we intuitively recognize and can feel in ourselves, but we probably don't know a lot about it. And the ultradian rhythm runs in 90-minute cycles. Okay, 90-minute cycles. So what that means is that let's talk about the circadian rhythm, and then I'll get back to the ultradian. The circadian rhythm has the ultradian rhythm within it, and so even though we are during the day awake and cognizant and up and all that sort of stuff, within that circadian rhythm there is an ultradian rhythm, and that ultradian rhythm, as I said, runs in 90-minute cycles, and we need to pay attention to it. So what that means is we can do things really, really, really well for about 90 minutes, and then we go into a trough, and that trough becomes the low point of our waking day, and we have a number of low points in our waking day. Now, the worst low points in our waking day come in early afternoon, and this is where we've had a couple of these ultradian troughs, and we haven't paid attention to them, and our body starts to scream out for rest. So what we should be doing is we should work for 90 minutes and then have a 10 to 15 minute period of active rest and renewal, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But typically we don't do that. We'll push through that, we'll push through that, we'll push through that. We fuel ourselves up with caffeine, with coffee, with sugar, with donuts, with fat, and eventually that catches us out, and that typically is early in the afternoon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. It's our body screaming out for rest. We've done the fuel up thing with the caffeine and the sugar. We start to release, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and no matter what we do at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we can't push through any longer, and this is what happens to us. Whereas if we listen to this ultradian rhythm, if we work for 90 minutes and have a 5 to 10 minute R&R break, then we work for another 90 minutes and have another R&R break, and then etc., etc. If we keep doing that sequentially, we don't end up like this gentleman here with his head on the desk, even though he's just drunk 2 cups of coffee. Now, if the other way to handle this ultradian rhythm, where we end up like this, the other way to handle it, if we're not as good at managing ourselves and not as good at doing these 90-minute work cycles, and I think these 90-minute work cycles are essential, and many of the practices that I've worked with one-on-one, we will instigate these 90-minute cycles. We'll have someone on shift at reception or nursing or vetting or whatever for 90 minutes. We pull them off shift for 5 or 10. I've worked in hospitals, with human hospitals as well, where we've done exactly the same thing, and we found that production and productivity has gone through the roof when we make that happen. And realistically, if you can give them 5 minutes off every 90 minutes, magic happens. But let's assume you can't make this happen for some reason, then a way to catch up on it is a power nap, a 10 to 15 minute power nap. I've put 30 on the slide, and I'm going to say that 30 is a little bit long. It may be useful initially. When you start taking power naps, you might need to take a while to fall asleep, but once you start getting good at it, 15 to 20 is all you need, and 30 is too long. The problem with 30 is you go into REM sleep, and that is too deep, and then when you wake up, you're groggy and you're not quite there. So the idea is a 10 to 20, 15 to 20 minute power nap done in the early afternoon, and that has been shown to increase your efficiency and effectiveness for the next 4 hours by about 30 to 40%. Now, Honda Japan, my apologies, Toyota Japan have actually instigated this, and they liked the research so much, and it was so well supported and documented, that all their middle line and upper line managers in Toyota Japan now are forced to take a power nap in the early afternoon. It's just part of the way that they run their business, and it's one of the most profitable businesses on the planet. So if they believe it, maybe more of us should take it on as well. That gentleman on the chain there, he won't fall off that for 15 minutes. He can balance there, so he's doing himself really well, as is this little puppy doggy. So once upon a time, now just think of a lot of the European countries around the Mediterranean. Now, a lot of those businesses shut up shop at 1 o'clock, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a dentist, whether it's a candlestick maker type of thing. They close down for 3 hours mid-afternoon. Everyone goes home, and then they come back to work at 3 or 4 o'clock. And they've done that for millennia. Why? Because it works. So let's talk about an interesting concept, effectively and efficiently restructuring your day so that you have a great result. Working in 90-minute increments and having a 5-minute break, or having power naps early in the afternoon is the way to have an efficient restructuring of your day so that you do consistently achieve better outcomes. Now, on to the next concept about structuring your day or restructuring your day. There's a book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog First. Now, that frog, in inverted commas, is the most unpalatable and hateful thing that you have to do that day. So let me explain what I mean. Every day we have a frog on our agenda. That frog is the thing that we don't want to do. It's the most hateful task that we have for that day. So what we need to do is we need to plan to eat that frog first. It is the first task that we should do on that day, because once we've eaten that frog, once we've attended to that task, life and the rest of that day will be bliss. So how do you make your day your agenda? So you plan your day the night before. Okay, so on Monday night you're going to plan for Tuesday, and you're going to write in order the things that you're going to do on Tuesday morning, and let's talk about in a practice situation. You may have to do consults when you come in, so you may not be able to get to your management stuff till say 10 or 11 or o'clock or midday. Let's assume it's midday. So what you're going to do is you're going to come in, you're going to do your cases, you're going to do your consults, you're going to see your clients, make those phone calls, and then at midday you're going to put aside a 90-minute block. And when you enter that high productivity block of 90 minutes, you're going to eat that frog first. You're going to do the one task first, which is the one you most hate, or the one that most repulses you, and the one you're least looking forward to. And remember, when it's done, the rest of your day will just be brilliant. Now, you plan the night before. So you're going to plan at 12 o'clock, I'm going to do this, and then this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm going to get this done in a period of 90 minutes. When the 90 minutes is up, even if you haven't finished all those tasks, you are going to stop and have a break. Now, why do you plan it the night before? Now, on this slide here, I put first thing in the morning. Ideally, you would plan them. You wouldn't do it at midday. You would do it at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. However, and why would you do it first thing in the morning? Because you're much more effective. Most people are much more effective and efficient first thing in the morning. So when you get up, you should eat that frog and do that 90-minute, whatever it is that you're doing. But if you can't, if you have to drive the kids to school or get them off to school, or see clients, or whatever it happens to be, then let's make it, like I said, 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whatever you like, but still plan it the night before and do it as early in the morning as you can. Why would you plan it the night before? Well, we have this, we have the conscious brain, and we have the unconscious brain. And as you know, the conscious is about 20 percent or maybe 10% of our power in inverted commas, and the subconscious is 80 or 90% of our power. So the unconscious or the subconscious is much more powerful than the conscious brain. And rarely do we use the subconscious or the unconscious brain very effectively or very efficiently. And when we plan things the night before, we can actually start to leverage the subconscious much more effectively. The subconscious, after all, is like a bunch of 3 to 7-year-old children that love you dearly and really want to please you. So when you plan things the night before, so you sit down at 8 or 9 o'clock before you go to bed and plan your next day and write it down, and writing is very much better than putting on your computer or typing, and studies show this well and truly. So when you write it down and then you go to sleep, during the night, your crew, your 3 to 7-year-old children who love you dearly, are going to be working on getting solutions to those things that you've put in that schedule for you. So when you wake up in the morning, a lot of the answers to the challenges that you're facing that next day will already be there. So in other words, you'll fly through it a lot more quickly. Now, you've had this happen. I know you have. You've had something in your head for a week or two, and all of a sudden you're in the shower, you're singing in the shower, and bang, the answer to that problem comes into your brain. You do this on a regular basis, whether it's in the shower or whether it's while you're brushing your teeth, or whether it's when you wake up first thing in the morning. But your crew, your 3 to 7-year-old children who love you dearly, have given you that solution while you've been asleep or while you even haven't been thinking about it. So harness them. As I said, focus on one task when you get up, when you get into that 90-minute zone, whether that's first thing in the morning or at midday like we talked about. You do it for up to 90 minutes, and let me just go back. You do it for up to 90 minutes, and you make sure there's no interruptions. Now, how much does an interruption cost you? If someone, let's assume you're in your office doing your Excel spreadsheet or eating that frog or whatever it is, and someone knocks on the door and you simply lift your head up and say, go away, that's cost you 21 minutes of thinking time. If you're in a consultation and you're with a client and the same thing happens, again, it's cost you 21 minutes, plus the client's also cheesed off because you were interrupted. It's not fair on the client. So any interruption costs you 90 minutes. Costs you 21 minutes, my apologies. So you need to put a system in place that when you're doing this 90-minute high power, high energy work where you're focused on one task, that no one interrupts you. Lock the door. Or I typically say to my one-on-one coaching clients, I tell them to get lost. What do I mean by get lost? Well, take the work that you've got to do and drive your car down to the beach, or drive your car down to the local park and sit in your car and do it, or sit on the beach and do it, or sit on the park bench and do it, or go down to the local coffee shop. Don't take your mobile phone. Get lost so people can't interrupt you, and you'll find you're a lot more effective and efficient. Even if you only do that 2 or 3 times a week, you'll find your productivity will go through the roof. Now, it's really, really important to focus on one task, because even though there is the old joke that women are great at multitasking and men aren't, no one is great at multitasking. Linear and sequential tasking versus multitasking or task switching is critical. Discontinuous tasking, which is task switching or switch tasking, is very, very, very ineffective and inefficient. If I had the time, I'd get you to do some little exercises to prove that to you, which is what I do in my one-on-one, what I do in live workshops. But just trust me on this, or look up the resources and the research yourself. We've set up to 90 minutes, and let's just focus on the big rocks, the important things, the frogs, and get them done and over with. And just imagine that if you eat that frog once a day every day, and you just knock over those big rocks 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, and you only get the big stuff completed, how much better your practice management life is going to be. 21 minutes. It's that important. I've actually Had it come up again. Now let's look at prioritizing. This is the old Eisenhower matrix. And so you can look that up. It was made famous by Stephen Covey, or Stephen Covey, however you like to pronounce it, but it originally comes from Eisenhower. Now, up the left-hand side, there is importance, with low importance down towards the left corner, bottom left corner, and high importance up to the top left corner. And then on the bottom axis, there is urgency, with towards the left being low urgency and towards the right being high urgency. So we have 4 quadrants in urgent and important, important, not urgent, not important, and urgent, not important. So what I suggest you do is that, at the beginning of every week, you get a whole series of Post-it notes, and you have 4 different colors. And obviously, one color would go into each quadrant. You print this sort of thing out, this matrix I've got here, put it up on the wall as an A3. At the beginning of every week, you write your different priority tasks on different colored Post-it notes. So you might put all the urgent and important on pink and put them all in that urgent and important quadrant. You might put all your not urgent, not important in yellow and put them in that bottom left-hand quadrant, etc. And so the frogs, the important things, are all in the top right-hand quadrant. And so you knock off everything, you attend to everything in that quadrant before you go to any other quadrant. Now let me be a little bit ruthless here. You as the practice owner, you as the head honcho, you as the practice manager, you as whoever you are, I'm going to suggest that you should only ever attend to things that are urgent and important. Okay, let me ask you, having said that, in what quadrant are you spending most of your time? I'm going to suggest that you should only ever do what's urgent and important, and not any of the others. Now let's move on a little bit. Urgent and important, you need to do it, and you need to do it immediately. Important but not urgent. You can delegate that, or if there is no one appropriate to delegate it to, it's important but it's not urgent. So decide when you do it, when you will do it, schedule it into your diary, and then make it happen, according to what we've talked about in the last few minutes. Urgent but not important, hey, delegate it. Definitely this is something you should never touch. And in the classic Eisenhower matrix, you'll see that not urgent and not important, the classic matrix says do it later. I say ditch it. If it's not urgent, not important, get rid of it. Now we're going to talk about emotional energy. And emotional energy is how up you are or how down you are. So it affects you personally, and it also affects the people around you, which is just as, if not maybe even more important. So there's lots of questions I've asked people in workshops, and I've asked them, how do you feel when you're at your best? And these are the words that come up: focused, engaged, energized, confident, excited, in the zone. So let's look at another matrix. We have low energy and high energy on the left, and negative energy and positive energy on the right. So we've got the high positive energy zone, or the performance zone, top right, the high negative energy or the survival zone, top left, the low positive energy or the X factor zone, here's that word again, X factor, and on the bottom right, and the low negative energy zone or the burnout zone on the bottom left. So now let's talk about these. And before we do, I'm sure you guessed there was a question going to come up in the middle of that quadrant. So what energy quadrant are you spending most of your time in? So the high positive energy quadrant is the high performance zone. It's the best place to produce results and goals. You knew this was coming up. You can only spend 90 minutes in it at a max before you start to burn out or phase out. So if you start, you'll be in this zone. You'll do something, you'll do it for 90 minutes, and then you'll start to fade out. The sensible person would stop at that point in time and do R&R, active relaxation, active recovery. But the non-sensible person would fuel themselves up with caffeine, sugar, donuts, self-releasing adrenaline and noradrenaline. We'll talk about this in a little minute. So you can do this 90-minute high performance, up to 4 times a day if you want, or a lot of practice managers that I talk to, we just say, hey, how about you just do it 4 times a week? And practice owners, how about you just do it 2 or 3 times a week, and you're going to get much better results than you're doing now, because you will do 3 times the work when you do it this way. So after 90 minutes, you need active R&R. As I said, in a practice situation, you may only schedule this twice a week for yourself. Now, the high negative energy quadrant, this is the survival zone. This is the default quadrant for danger. The previous one was the default quadrant for production. This is the quadrant for danger. This is a great zone if there is a lion or a tiger around. Now, a million years ago when we were cavemen, we wouldn't want to think, is that a lion? Should I run away for it? No, you wanted to react. You wanted to do the fear, or you wanted to do the flight or the fight thing. Same in the Middle Ages. Was it someone comes up to you with a sword or a spear? You don't want to sort of debate in your head whether you want to, take action or not. You want to take action, because if you don't, you're dead. If there's a child trapped underneath a car or in a burning building, you don't want to think about whether you should jump into the burning building. You just want to act. So this zone has real reasons to exist, and it's very valid. However, in modern society, we often respond to non-danger as danger. So when we have an argument with a co-worker, with a boss, with a client, we often respond with adrenaline release and noradrenaline release, and respond to that. Really, what's a non-dangerous situation as dangerous, because we release all this cortisol and all these sorts of things, and they flood our system. Our body makes no distinction between the two. Our body gets flooded with stress hormones. Now, the thing about adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol is it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. What do we do in our prefrontal cortex? Well, let me give you a hint. The lower species don't have it. In other words, the prefrontal cortex is where we think. It is one of the big differences between humans and many other species. So your prefrontal cortex gets shut down. That's great when there's a lion or a tiger or a fire or someone with a spear. You don't want to think, you want to react. But in a situation at work, do you want to stop your receptionist at not, thinking at reception? Do you want to stop your vets thinking during a consultation or during a piece of surgery? Well, if they're in this high negative energy quadrant for a significant period of time, their prefrontal cortex shuts down and they become less able to think constructively. Isn't that interesting? So maybe you're now starting to see why I love putting people off shift every 90 minutes, because I want them being able to think effectively and efficiently all the time. Now, when you spend a long time in this high negative energy zone, when you keep fueling yourself up with caffeine, with sugar, with adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, fats, sugars, all this sort of stuff, and you spend a long time in this negative energy quadrant, you invariably default down to the burnout zone, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, this energy zone, the low positive energy quadrant, bottom right-hand side, is a zone that was only discovered in the last few years. It is an X factor zone. It is the renewal zone. So remember, this zone is deliberately on the right-hand side below the high positive energy zone. And the people that function best, and the Richard Bransons of the world that are so high productivity, that have such high productivity, deliberately shuttle between the high positive energy quadrant and the low positive energy quadrant. They have found a strategy to deliberately renew and relax. Now, in most people, this is often overlooked, okay, but it's undervalued, but it shouldn't be. We see people that deliberately drop into this low positive energy quadrant as slackers. Now, they're not slackers, they're very sensible and they've learned to shuttle between low positive energy and high positive energy. There's a friend of mine, a specialist, a veterinary specialist in PE, Port Elizabeth in South Africa, and she actually found this for herself. She would do intensive consults and all that sort of stuff, as you can imagine a specialist would, for 90 minutes, maybe 100 minutes, and then she would go and garden, and she never knew why, and she'd only need to go and garden for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and there's a garden around her practice, and after 5 to 7 minutes of gardening, she'd feel good again, and she could come back on and come back inside and carry on. So she was doing this intuitively. Now that you know about it, it's important that you do it deliberately. So intentionally choose this zone when your energy levels are declining. Now, how are some ways that you can drop into this low positive energy quadrant? You can go for a walk, you can do gardening, you can eat some nuts and fruits, you can listen to some Bach or Beethoven or Brahms or some music of that ilk. Headbanging music doesn't do it, I'm afraid. You can go swim some laps of a pool. You can go to the gym for 5 or 10 minutes. You can meditate. All those things work. You need to find what works best for you. You can do a power nap, a 10-minute power nap. You only need to be in here for 5 or 10 minutes. That's all. 15 minutes max. That's all you need. As I said, intentionally drop in. Breathing exercises. If you're into yoga, breathing exercises is brilliant. So just some suggestions there for you. So that then you will have actively renewed yourself and you'll be able to get back into that high positive energy productive zone. I've alluded to this low negative energy quadrant previously, and as I said, if you stay in that high negative energy zone for any significant period of time, you invariably end up in this zone. It's the bane of our industry, and it's related to burnout. It's related to diseases like heart attacks, high blood pressure. It's related to cancers. There's so many studies on this. I don't need to go through this. You know this intuitively as well. Now we're on to the third of the 4 things that we're going to talk about today, and that's thinking energy or mental energy. I'm just going to get a lozenge because my throat's getting a little bit harsh as it does on webinars. So thinking and mental energy, and this one is interesting as well. So I've talked about task switching and multitasking and whatnot a little while ago, and I'll mention it again, excuse me. It is critical that you focus on one task at a time and you do linear tasking, not task switching or multitasking. That task switching and multitasking makes you 50% more inefficient. So don't do it. One thing at a time. Uninterrupted. I think we've mentioned that one before. Sequentially. I'm repeating myself, and I do that when I think the point is important. Now, what this allows you to do, it allows you to maximize your IQ. It's about maximizing your underlying capacity to bring your intelligence to life. And when you focus on one thing in the way that we've just talked about, that's what happens. So you're either focused and engaged, or you're not focused and renewing. So let me give you an example here. You're a practice manager, you're a practice owner. You've just done your 90 minutes of high intensity, high productivity work, and you think you're going to go and do a cat spay because you think that, or a cat neuter because you think that is relaxing and restful, and you'll get your an R&R there. Sorry, no, it doesn't work like that. That's grey zone. That is that is neither focused and engaged nor not focused and renewing. Just because you can do a cat spay with both eyes closed and both hands tied behind your back doesn't mean that it's renewing you. Renewing needs to be an active process, not a passive process. So I hope I've made that point very clear. Avoid that grey zone. Now, being non-focused is one of the scourges, if not the scourge, of modern society. Because we'll be on it, and look, you know, I'm going to be a little bit. I apologise if I'm being rude. I don't mean to be, but I'm suspicious that some people listening to this webinar or watching this webinar might actually have their Internet Explorer open on a website and looking at some stuff, even if that's research. They might be tending to their emails. They might have Twitter and Facebook open. So they're neither concentrating on this webinar nor concentrating on anything else. That is task switching or multitasking. Now, why has that become so common? And we all know about people that, you know, drive and message at the same time or talk on their mobile phones or whatever. Now, why is that? It's because we have become addicted to the ping of the email or the beep our iPhone gives off when someone messages on Facebook. And it's been shown by studies that that ping from that email or that Facebook message, whatever it is, lights up the same centers of our brain as does the hit from a hit of cocaine or something along those lines. Okay, the same pleasure centers are stimulated by the Facebook post when we read it and the email message and our phone going off when we receive a phone call. And it's all about instant gratification. So these distractions are, you know, as well as being mentally addictive, are physically addictive. All the studies show that they're as addictive as, you know, smoking and drugs and alcohol, if you want to be that you know, blunt. So why does it happen? Well, the studies say that it's because life is so busy, we're not really sure whether we're valued anymore. And so when we receive these email messages, these social media messages, these interruptions, these telephone calls, etc., we are actually starting to feel valued again. Now, it becomes addictive. I'm not going to talk about this in too much detail. There's another whole webinar that I do on this, which you're welcome to join me on at some stage. We'll be doing them in the near future, and I'll spend a whole hour on this and also talk about the strategies to manage it. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today, before we get to the suggestions as to how to implement this, is to talk about the energy of the human spirit. Now, if you look at Dan Pink's work, Dan Pink, you can look him up on YouTube, you can look him up on TED. He says that the most important thing that drives us is purpose. And again, there's many studies that show that support this. And Dan Pink cites studies by Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Harvard Business School, as well as many others. Now, you know, we go to work, especially in our industry, because what we do matters, and we derive energy from that, and that's what juices us, if you like. The fact that we know that what we do matters. You know, there is value in what I have done, and it's important for your team as well. So if you don't have that, if you don't believe that there is value in what you do, then I'm going to suggest that you're probably in the wrong industry, and it's time to sort of look back and say, do I really want to keep doing what I'm doing if I don't believe there's value in it? So that's all I'm really going to talk about with the energy of the human spirit. So now we have our actionable steps, and I've cut it down from 4 to 3 to make it a little bit easier for you, just for today's training. So the first thing is get adequate sleep, a minimum of 7 to 8 hours a night, and only 2.5%. So if you think that you're that 2.5% or part of that 2.5% of the population that needs less than 7 hours sleep, okay, go for it. But remember, there's only 2.5% of the population that need less than 7 hours. I know I'm certainly not one of them. Number two actionable step. Do the most important thing first every morning, between 45 and 90 minutes. Now, if you're a runner, so let's assume I said to you, hey, pull your joggers on, we're going to go for a run. As soon as we got out the gate and we've got a little while down the road, you're going to be saying to me, hey, Dick, how far are we going? We're going to go 30 yards or we're going to do a marathon. because you want to know a start point and you want to know a finish point. Because if we're only going to go 30 yards, you can go hell for leather. But if we're going to do a marathon, you're going to want to pace yourself. Now, it's the same with your brain. You need to say to yourself, hey, brain, we're going to start this at 10 o'clock, say, and I'm going to finish at 11:30, 90 minutes later. So you need a specific start time and a specific finish time so that your brain can go hell for leather during those 90 minutes and pace itself perfectly to obtain the maximum outcome for you. If you just get in the room and say it's 10 o'clock, we'll just work until we feel like no longer working, your brain's going to say, oh, I don't know how fast or how slow I should go here, and become very much more ineffective and inefficient. During the whole webinar, I've been talking about 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, and here on this slide I've said for between 45 and 90. Why is that? Well, let's assume you go to the gym, and let's assume you have never been to the gym in the past or haven't been for 5 years. If you go and try and pick up the 150-pound barbell, it's not going to work. Now, if you have never sat down and concentrated for 90 minutes, or not since university or school, for example, and you try and do it for 90 minutes first off the bat, hey, look, it's not going to work. So you're better off, if you go to the gym and you're going to do biceps curls and you haven't done curls for a long time, you're probably best off starting with the 10-pound weights and working up over a few weeks. It's the same here. Start with a comfortable period of time, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and work up to that 9 minutes. But never go beyond the 90 minutes. And after you've done that, after you've done whatever it is, your 45 or your 90, with a specific start and a finish time, then have a 10 to 30 minute period of active rest and renewal. And you will find that you will get so much more done and of a higher quality. And then a little awareness exercise. Take stock of what energy zone, what energy quadrant you're in 3 to 4 times per day over the next week or two, and then ask yourself, why am I in the zone that I'm in? Am I in the high performance zone? Am I in the renewal zone? Am I in the burnout zone? Where am I? And why am I there? Haven't I eaten properly? Did I have an argument? Was there, did I get cheesed off about the fact that I hit every red light on the way to work? Is it lack of sleep? What's keeping you from being at your best? And then put strategies in place to manage that. So that's the end of the training. As I said, if you want to get the notes for this, which are very much more detailed, please send me an email. If you feel like coming on board for the other webinars that we're doing, send me an email as well, and I'll let you know when they're on. So I wonder if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gelderman. What great insight into productivity. We do indeed have 3 questions for you. Number 1 would be, how can you know how well you're prioritizing? What are those key indicators that actually tell you how well you are using the Eisenhower quadrant?
It's a good question, and prioritizing is different for everyone. And what I mean by that is, if we both have a list of 10 tasks to do, I would put them in a certain order, and someone else would put them in a different order. Let me put it this way. Too many of us focus on our to-do-it list. Our to-do-it list may be to buy some milk, or to write this journal article, or whatever. Whereas to me, the priorities are the things that achieve our life's outcomes and our life's goals, and drive us to where we want to be with our family, our friends, our relationships, our loved ones, our physicality, our spirituality, and all those sorts of things. So to me, when we prioritize correctly, our big rocks, our big picture, like I said, our long-term life's outcomes are the things that take precedence. So look, I hope that that's made a part of an answer, at least, anyway.
It certainly did, Dr. Gelderman. So let's move on to question number 2. How can emotional energy affect veterinarians during their daily work routines?
Emotional energy in the veterinary workplace is a huge issue, and there's a whole number of facets to it. And the first facet is that I'm going to assume that most people listening or watching are going to be the practice leaders or the practice managers. And, you know, it's simply this. You come to work in a great mood and your whole team's going to be in a great mood. You come into work in a foul mood and your whole team's going to reflect that mood and be in a foul mood as well. Now, when you're in a great mood, your team's in a great mood, that will reflect on the clients that come in the door, and they'll love coming into your practice. If you're in a foul mood, the team will be in a foul mood, and your clients will want to, run to another practice because they don't want to walk in your doors because it feels so bad. So that's the one thing. Excuse me. That's one thing that the leader creates the mood and the energy of the workplace. Now, number two, we have a very high stress workplace, and we have clients that are unhappy or angry, and not necessarily angry with us, angry with patient outcomes, angry with the fact that we've told them that their dog's got cancer and they need to spend $2,000 having a pinning or a plating or major surgery or whatever. And we have clients that are sad because their pet's been euthanized. So we have a very emotional workplace. And we haven't been at school trained in how to manage those energies. We're almost in a similar situation to a post-traumatic stress type situation, and certainly to a lesser degree than a post-traumatic stress type situation, but still similarly emotionally. And one of the things that I will suggest that practitioners do is get counselors or someone else in to do some training in the workplace at how to manage energy and how to manage stress, so that the whole team learns, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, going to be there to support each other during these stressful crises. So I hope that's answered that one again.
Most certainly did. So our last question for today is, you mentioned some actionable steps, but which do you think is the most important, or rather, which do you think is one that should be immediately taken upon?
Sleep. Absolutely, one word answer: sleep. Because I see so many people miss out on it, and they think they can cheat, cheat on it, and it's not going to turn around and cause issues. And unfortunately, it does. They just don't realize it. So yeah, the number one thing is get the sleep you need. Everything else comes second.
Brilliant. So I hope our viewers listen closely to your answers, especially about sleep. So
Yes.
unfortunately, our education on air comes to an end. Thank you so much for being here on this day, Dr. Gelderman. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute joy to be here. Thank you to the viewer listener, and thank you very much for moderating it so brilliantly. I appreciate it.